So this is a 10-minute, starting the clock. And at this point, I might not want to just make it all negative contour blind drawing. So I'm going to limit it. I'm going to start looking a little more. So think about 95%. So we're looking at our paper, one little extra second, even when I stop drawing. So I could begin to make better adjustments and measurements. I could start here, for example, with picking some of the foundational points that would allow me to kind of give a map. Some spatial major lines that will just point to it. And I'm looking at shoulder, elbow, how that lines up with this knee here. I'm trying to get a sense of it. And how that gives me just about a new negative space here. So, you might not see it too clearly, but I did some very light lines here. You could see them there. Just pointing at major highlights. Some of the joints, shoulders. I did add the hands in here, just a little gesture for it. This vertical line for what seemed a bag, and then the major lines for where the angle of the legs is described. Now, from here, I'm going to start my negative contour drawing. So once again, I'm going to start at the top. I'm using charcoal again. And I want to make sure I get a good read, because I'm not just thinking about contour, negative space now. I'm also thinking about proportion. I'm adding a little extra quality of line for the texture of what I'm drawing here. I'm beginning to go a little more into the figure for description. So not waiting to go all the way around, but not losing sense of what is the main thing I'm focused on. Still, the contour, negative space to describe the pose. And here, as you can see, it begins to get tricky once you slow down and begin to try to add detail. So remind yourself, nope, not yet. We want to add as much information, general, big, and simple. We go from big to small, from simple to more complex. So the only thing is I'm not going all the way around in one way. I'm finding my way through negative space while at the same time being a little more focused on proportion. So this becomes a new strategy. And like with everything, strategies, you have to find what works best for you, how you can make it work efficient, and allowing yourself to move from one end to another before you compromise too much on. There we go. Just losing focus there for a second. Moving over to the other side, and now I'm giving myself extra clues. But again, what is the amount and the level of detail that you need? That's a big question. And are you getting it without shortcuts, skipping steps? Are you getting it because that's what you're looking for, not because you're just rushing through it? Big part of how it works. If you're doing it that way, And usually you say, well, that's how I like it, fast. But it could seem like you're skipping, rushing through it. Who's to say, right? But you should be aware of why it is you're choosing that amount of detail, whether it's a lot or a little. And I always favor the less is more. When we try to force too much detail, we make it something else. We lose a little bit of that, I believe, some of it, realistic expression. Going back and forth. And you got to be honest with yourself. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the key is why. Why did it work this time and why didn't it when it doesn't? And it's if you can catch yourself and why it is working and why it isn't when it does, that's when you build a toolbox. And that's how you can access pretty much like anything. The efficiency to make it work whenever you want it. And again, we say that, but sometimes it's the mood, it's the day, didn't get enough sleep, whatever it is. Not to expect, keep your level of expectation realistic and knowing what you're looking for. In this case, just as an exercise, whatever amount of detail I can get away with because of the medium that I'm using, in this case, charcoal for this area here, I am not expecting. Plus, this is just a 10-minute drawing. It's not an hour. What I would be adding to an hour drawing would be completely different. Couple of things that you might want to begin to add as you develop more and more drawing, not just line. You can begin to add some contrast values. In this case, it gets tricky because it's so dark in some areas, you kind of lose track of what goes where. But as we've done before, we could push it just a little bit further. And this is one area that I was talking about. It's very hard to tell what's happening all underneath here. It's all just one big mass of dark colors. Here it's a little bit easier, or we can come up with a solution. Even in areas where you see something dark, like these shoes, it's darker and actually lighter. Where you have highlights and shadows to begin to actually develop further and further, not just the line. And for a 10-minute sketch, perfect.